Hi, students. This video is to talk about Frankenstein from chapter 4, the birth scene of the creature, all the way through the end of volume 2, which you should have completed reading by now. Some things that are worth noting at the birth scene is how immediately Frankenstein is absolutely obsessed with this idea of creating life. He's not in contact with his family. He's barely eating or sleeping. He's just very focused on this one goal. And as so often happens when we're really obsessed with a goal and we finally reach it, often, sometimes it's not everything we thought it would be. And he instantly, in fact, is horrified by what he's created. And that horror, as we can see in the text, is completely determined by the way the creature looks. He says, "I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe?" So immediately he considers the creature a catastrophe. Or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form? His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes. So he's immediately grossed out by the creature. He's immediately horrified by what he's done. This creature can't speak when he's born. But the creature reaches out for him. And what does Frankenstein do? He runs away. So he's brought this creature into existence and he immediately abandons him. You might look at the different birth scenes that are linked in this PowerPoint that's available on Canvas. It's kind of interesting to see how different filmmakers have interpreted the birth scene and envisioned Frankenstein. So you can check those out if you want. Later on, he calls the creature the wretch whom I created. He talks constantly about the ugliness of the creature, which we all know, right? We know the insides are more important than the outsides, but all Frankenstein can see are those outsides, and he cannot get past them. You could also read a little bit about charnel houses and dissecting rooms if you want to see the materials that Frankenstein maybe used to create his creature in Shelley's mind. And then I was talking about in the last video how in the Age of Reason, there was this incredible faith in knowledge and science, and that if something were scientifically true, it was good. And Frankenstein is one of the first works where an artist really calls that into question and starts to say, well, no, just because something is scientifically possible does not mean that it's necessarily moral or good for the world. So a point in the novel where we get a hint of that is on page 43, where Frankenstein says, "A human being in perfection ought always to preserve a calm and peaceful mind and never to allow passion or a transitory desire to disturb his tranquility." And it's entirely possible, right, that we think that Frankenstein thinks of his own obsession with creating life as a kind of passion that maybe disturbed his tranquility. And remember too that we're in the aftermath of the French Revolution, which started as this great rational idea, people, the masses, should have power. Not all the power should be in the hands of the king or the nobility. But then, as we saw, the French Revolution devolved into people wanting revenge, into bloodshed, into these intense passions that became very destructive. So Shelley is writing in the decades after that, very bloody time. I do not think that the pursuit of knowledge is an exception to this rule. If the study to which you apply yourself has a tendency to weaken your affections and to destroy your taste for those simple pleasures in which no, I think it's supposed to be alloy, can possibly mix, then that study is certainly unlawful. That is to say, not benefiting the human mind. So he's saying something not so in line with the values of the age of reason here. He's saying, any passion can be destructive, even if it's a passion for a certain kind of knowledge. And it doesn't benefit us just because it's scientifically possible. He does, after he escapes, seeks solace in nature, which, as we've talked about before, is a real value of the Romantic period, this idea that nature restores. The creation, the birth of the creature and the creation of the creature and all that science that allows him to create the creature happens in the city. And when he's horrified by what he's done, he escapes and is restored by nature. And later on, when William is murdered, he witnesses a storm, and he says, "Oh, William, dear angel, this is thy funeral, this is thy dirge." So the storm is a kind of funeral for William. I'm gonna go. So one thing, we talked about heroes and heroines in Frankenstein last week. And it's probably becoming increasingly clear in this section that Frankenstein is not much of a hero. In some ways, we kind of know that is the way he abandons the creature after he creates him. The way his actions surrounding Justine. Frankenstein figures out pretty quickly that the creature probably killed William. And yet he is so ashamed of his creation and the havoc that he's brought into the world, or this, what he calls catastrophe, that he cannot tell anybody that he knows the creature killed William. And to the extent that Justine ends up getting put to death for William's death. So not so much of a hero, it's not seeming in this section of the book. And he never really is taking responsibility for his poor choices. He sort of says, I feel bad about it, but he doesn't really take any steps to handle it. He doesn't try to kill the creature. He doesn't tell anybody what he's done that in a way that might protect people. He keeps hiding what he's done, which creates more and more destruction as the novel goes on. Again, we're seeing a lot of children and absent parents in Frankenstein. The Frankenstein himself is kind of an absent parent. He talks about being abandoned. And then we go into this section after the creature and Frankenstein meet, where we get the creature, what happens to the creature story after he is abandoned. And it's sort of like the history of humans, right? He starts off, he's like a caveman. He discovers fire. He discovers that if he touches fire, he gets burned. He discovers if wood is dry, it will burn in the fire. He discovers the fire gives heat and light. He discovers that if he cooks certain things in the fire, they're better and other things are not. and he discovers the DeLacy family, and through them he discovers language and eventually reading. Um, and he's kind of like an Enlightenment scientist, right? He's off figuring things out for himself because he has to, right? Um, and and he's left to his own devices and does okay for a while. And then he meets or he observes the DeLacy's. And in observing the DeLacy's, he observes kindness and love, and it makes him yearn for love. And he starts to read, and he reads Paradise Lost, which is the story of Satan's fall. Satan becomes jealous and ends up becoming Satan. And he relates. He too feels jealousy. He wants the love that the DeLacy family has, and yet he understands it might be very hard for him to get that. From the DeLacy family, the creature learns about kindness, humanity, and family. And he emulates them, right? He collects wood for them. He clears the snow away from their cottage. They're poor. The father is blind. And he feels empathy and wants to help them. He becomes sort of a participant observer. He's like their magic fairy helping them, and they can't figure out who is helping them, but he's doing good deeds for them. He says, I spent the winter in this manner. The gentle manners and beauty of the cottagers greatly endeared them to me. When they were unhappy, I felt depressed. When they rejoiced, I sympathized in their joys. I saw human beings besides them, and if any other happened to enter the cottage, their harsh manners and rude gait only enhanced to me the superior accomplishments of my friends. So he recognizes that they're unusually good people. And he's done good deeds before and tried to connect with other people. And we know he almost got stoned to death at one point, trying to connect. He sees himself in a transparent pool, and he's horrified by his appearance. And he understands why people are running from him or scared of him or attacking him. He said, I was filled with the bitterest sensation of despondence and mortification on seeing how he looked. So we see he's trying to connect. People will not let him connect. If they just see him, they assume he's an aggressor. And this actually connects to a very popular philosophy of the time, which was phrenology. And phrenology was a belief promoted by Franz Gall, which had a theory, was a theory that the shape of people's faces, the shape of their body, even perhaps their ethnicity, sort of determined their inside qualities. So unfortunately, phrenology has been used to justify white supremacy. It's been used to justify things like systemic racism, systemic sexism. And we see the influence of it, and it was very popular at the time that Shelley was writing Frankenstein. And we see throughout this novel, people judging somebody's insides by their outsides. It's not just Frankenstein. We'll see other characters, often Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, sort of describes the character of someone by describing their outsides instead of what they say or do. And the creature is a victim of this belief that what's on the outside says something about what's on the inside. And that belief that's running all throughout this novel is a reflection of the popularity of phrenology at this time. And you might think about, is Shelley agreeing with phrenology, or is she calling it into question? Yeah, phrenology becomes a way that criminals are profiled and racism is justified. And I might also ask you to think about, who are you caring about as you read this novel? Are you caring about Frankenstein? Are you caring about the creature? And if whoever you care about, why do you care about them? Where is your sympathy? And what do you think makes you identify or care about that character? At the end of the section, at the end of volume 2, we see the Frankenstein and the creature meet. The creature tells Frankenstein essentially his life story. And he makes a request of Frankenstein. I just want a partner. I just want a friend. We talked about the theme of friendship. And Frankenstein goes back and forth in this passage. He says, I was moved. Didn't I owe him this as his creator? But what if he gets destructive again? And the creature says, if you consent, neither you nor any other human being shall ever see us again. I will go to the vast wilds of South America. I'll just take my wife and we'll go away, but I've got to have a friend. If I don't have a friend, I can't stop this rage that's inside me. So that's where we leave things at the end of volume 2. Frankenstein is sort of vacillating, right? Yeah, I'll do it. Should I do it? Maybe I shouldn't do it. And we're sort of left with him in this state of indecision about whether he should help the creature or not. So those are all things to notice in this section. Let me see if there's anything else. No, that's where we'll take up next time. So think about where your sympathies are lying. Think about what makes somebody human. Think about what the portrayal of science and knowledge is in the novel, and how it might be different than the portrayal of science and knowledge that we saw in Kant and Descartes and Duguge and Wollstonecraft. And we will be exploring it more in class.